Malam Minggu belanja manggis, saatnya ngobrol pakai bahasa Inggris.
Loh, kenapa Bu?
Kenapa Mas? Tanya coba pada rumput yang bergoyang. Sebentar. Coba tanya sama Bu Yusefa Mas.
Iya Pak Bu Yus, kenapa harus pakai bahasa Inggris?
Lah, tamu kita hari ini dari Denmark, Mas. Masa yuk pakai bahasa Jawa toh? Ntar jaka sembung alias nggak nyambung. Kalau tamunya ahemnya Bu Uke, baru pakai bahasa kalbu.
Oh ya gitu. Jadi semua bahasa memang perlu dicoba biar ahemnya segera ahem.
Tapi sebenarnya ahemnya Bu Uke nyata nggak sih Bu Yus? Kok aku masih mikir terus.
Ini
Nambah Mas. Atau mungkin kita perlu minta Bu Uke memvisualkan ahemnya ya, biar sedikit nyata. Ngomong-ngomong soal visual, topik kita hari ini salah satu kata kuncinya ada visualnya loh. Kita mau ngajakin Sobat Palming ngobrolin tentang visual thinking strategies bareng tamu kita seorang dosen yang mengajar di Denmark dan Swedia. Thanks to Pak Krisogonusida yang sudah merekomendasikan. Nah, siapa tahu topiknya ini cocok untuk masalah perahaman Bu Uke juga loh.
Wah, seru nih Bu. Kalau gitu kita langsung sapa saja tamunya ya. Hello Shaun, I'm Thomas. Nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So my name is Shaun and Sobat Malming.
Yep, correct.
So I am senior lecturer in Malmö University. I work in social linguistics in an education context. And I'm working in the English Studies department, or the English Studies section in the Culture, Society and Media department at the University of Malmö. I also work as an external lecturer at the University of Copenhagen in what is called the Engeron department. That's English, Germanic, and Romance languages department, where I teach French as well. Yeah, well, that's me for the moment in any case.
Okay, thank you, Shaun, for the introduction. My name is Uke. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
And apa Bu?
Maybe we can ask Shaun to introduce himself again, but in, I don't know, like in his language.
In Swedish?
Yeah.
No, well, I could do it. Yeah, jeg kan godt gøre det på dansk, fordi jeg kan ikke snakke svensk. I don't speak Swedish, I speak Danish.
Okay.
On pourrait bien le faire en français aussi, because French and English are my two languages. But I could try doing it in Danish. Why not?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Hej, mit navn er Shaun. Jeg sociolingvist. Jeg arbejder på Malmö University i Sverige. Jeg sidder lige nu i Danmark, og jeg snakker dansk. Og jeg arbejder med sociolingvistik i en uddannelseskontekst. I Københavns Universitet, jeg er ekstern lektor, hvor jeg underviser fransk en gang imellem. Men min store professionelle aktivitet er på Malmö Universitet, hvor jeg underviser med jeres gode ven Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
Thank you very much again, Shaun, for the bilingual introduction. And as Josefa mentioned before, that our topic today will be about visual thinking strategies to reading. But before we start more on our discussion, could you tell us first what visual thinking strategies is and why are you interested in it?
Well, visual thinking strategies is, first of all, it's an inspiring discussion, facilitation, teaching strategy. And it was originally associated with art studies. And I'll get back to that in a few minutes, because that could be quite surprising for people to see somebody who's working with social linguistics, but also a language teacher, with this type of teaching strategy that was originally developed in art studies, but today its interdisciplinary qualities have been are recognized, and long recognized, in fact, and I would even say that visual thinking strategies, or VTS, promotes interdisciplinarity, and one learns when one is in a visual thinking strategy session. One learns how to put words onto what one sees, and one learns how to do it in, I think, a democratic way, and that supports self-reflection and critical thinking in a group dynamic. So there are a lot of things in that explanation, I think, that need to be possibly unpacked as well. The discussion facilitation aspect of it is where ultimately people who participate in visual thinking strategies are encouraged to discuss what they see in a group, and the democratic aspect of it is, and of course, when I use the word democracy here, or when I use the term democratic, it's in a very large sense, but it's ultimately about reflecting on an object or an image or a text, but doing it with other people, and allowing oneself to be influenced by other people in that reflection. And so it encourages empathy, the individual is encouraged to express themselves on an equal level with other people. But in that expression, that self-expression, you're also adjusting and reflecting and formulating ideas in cooperation with other people. And so VTS has been recognized as a strategy, a teaching strategy that encourages understanding between individuals and people, and encourages listening to other people's opinions. And in that fashion, in that manner, it is considered a teaching strategy that encourages democracy.
Okay, wow, interesting. Now, several articles that I have read mention that visual thinking strategies are also helpful for second language learners. Why is it so, Shaun?
Well, as I said earlier on, visual thinking strategies were developed in art studies, and Philip Jennewein, who was the director of education at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, he noticed with his colleagues that people who participated in the courses that were organized by the department gave fantastic evaluations of their courses, but they found that the information that participants were receiving wasn't really sticking. So because this information just didn't stick, they wanted to develop a way of introducing people to art that would have tangible results and help people analyze these objects of art and develop their own abilities for aesthetic analysis. Now, they took this VTS strategies, which they developed, Philip Jennewein, with Abigail Howson, who was a Harvard professor, a Harvard cognitive psychologist based in Harvard, and who did research at MoMA. And based on this research, they developed visual thinking strategies, which they applied at Malmö, but they realized that this could have use within the education system in general. So they tested visual thinking strategies with early years learners in the local education system, and they found that these young pupils going from their art classes, particularly after they had gone beyond the initiation stage, to VTS, they were going into their other classes, like English classes, for example, or even math, science classes, and they were applying the structure that was applied in VTS in those classes. Now, VTS is organized around 3 questions, essentially. The first question is, what is going on in this picture, for example, or it could be image, or it could be text, or whatever later on. And the second question is, what is it that you see that makes you say that? And the third question is, what more can we find? And it, as a sort of a protocol, as a structure, they found that the children were interiorizing it and applying it in other subject areas. And so very quickly, these teachers, like for example, in English class, were seeing that their pupils were in their analytical skills were progressing in ways that they didn't expect, and certainly in positive ways, and that they were actually VTSing, if you like, by themselves and with each other. And the critical thinking skills essentially were far more advanced than they expected for their age, and they were able to apply this in their subject areas. So that was a huge realization, I imagine, for Philip Jennewein and Abigail Hausen and other people who were involved in VTS at that time. But I imagine as well it was a huge revelation as well for these teachers in these schools. Now, more specifically with regard to second language learning, VTS is a strategy that requires that you put words on what you're thinking, what your reflections to describe. With these questions, you express your opinion. You take some time. You look, you see, and then you talk. And then your facilitator or the teacher will paraphrase what you said and point at at different parts of that object or image relating to what you've said. And I'll demonstrate this in a little while, so it'll be easier for you to visualize. And what is happening there with second language learning is that the student is expressing themselves, the student is hearing what they're saying in other words, and it's being reconfirmed for them. But there's also another really important aspect of VTS, is that there is an active component, if you like, of VTS is creating the safe place for the participants, that everybody's opinion and everybody's interpretation is treated equally. First of all, so everybody, those who might be considered, for example, weaker students in a class or shy or whatever, their opinions are at an equal level with the best students in the class. So everybody's on an equal playing field. That's a really important aspect of it. But also second language learners, and this was very quickly noticed in the United States, where VTS was, as I said earlier on, developed first, was that you can point. You don't have to say anything. You can just point at objects in an image. And the facilitator or teacher will then put what you're pointing at into words as well. So the participation, even amongst those who are very shy in a class or don't feel that they have enough of that second or foreign language, the participation of those students is quite high in VTS. And so therefore there is an emancipatory, if you like, an emancipatory effect for these students that may feel, but that may be somewhat marginalized in language classes with traditional teaching.
Wow.
I hope I've covered most of this. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's very interesting, Shaun. And as we focus on like reading for this podcast, we would like to know how can we use visual thinking strategies for reading, especially for the second language learners, maybe, Shaun? Could you give us some pictures related to it?
Yes, well, for reading, now it has visual thinking strategies has been used in several countries now in the encouragement of reading, especially amongst young people. And I emphasize as well, the visual thinking strategies can be used with any age group. And it can be used in several different contexts, and I'll tell you about that later on. But with reading, well, in Denmark, for example, where I'm sitting right now, it's been used with a program called Læselyst. Læse is reading. Lyst is the desire or the desire to do something. So it's a program to improve the desire of reading, or to encourage reading amongst young people. This has been done in conjunction with, I think, the Ministry of Culture here in Denmark and the Ministry of Education, but also with the library system in Denmark. The library system in Denmark is a highly, I have to say, an impressive institution in itself here in Denmark, where all the libraries in Denmark interconnected with university libraries, school libraries everywhere. So anything you want, you could just go into your local library and you will get it. So it's a very important part of Danish society, the local library. And in this project, which they did with VTS and VTS Denmark, a local organization which promotes VTS in Denmark, they did a program with training librarians in VTS. And through this program, they did certain things like, for example, carry out VTS sessions with children with images. But they might use the images on the book, for example, on the cover of the book, or on the back of the book, or in the book, to encourage interest in and a desire to read the book as well by these children. Another thing which they did, which I found quite interesting, was they did VTS with a certain image that might be totally separate, not connected with any book, but VTS with an image, and then encourage the children afterwards to look for books in subjects that would be related to the image. And they have found that they have an uptake. There are more children borrowing books from the libraries and reading. That's one example. Another very interesting example in the United States I've seen, but also something that I've thought a lot about myself, is the use of VTS in texts, where you have actually a text, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs that would be on a screen, and that may also be provided to the students in a class on paper or on their iPads, if they have that technology to hand. But you also have to have the screen where, as a group, everybody focuses in on as well, and whereby the teacher would introduce the text, then ask the students to take a moment to silently engage with the text, to look at the text and to read the text. So you have this, that is the moment of silent looking. And then the teacher would ask the question, well, what is going on in this text? And the students would point to certain things. Now, this could be an example of, and this is just off the top of my head, but there are examples of this that you can find on freely available on the internet, which is really interesting. But for example, somebody put up their hands and say, well, John is looking forward to seeing, I don't know, Maura tonight, okay? He's really looking forward to seeing Maura because he has bought a present for her. And so the next question the teacher could ask is, what do you see in the text that makes you say that John is really looking forward to seeing Maura tonight? Well, the student could then point to a couple of lines in the text, and it might be that John is really happy. He's just bought a present and he's going to see Maura tonight. Well, then the facilitator could say, well, okay, Peter, you say that John is really happy. You noticed that he has been to maybe a gift shop in the text, and he's really looking forward to seeing Maura tonight, or something of that nature. This is just off the top of my head. It's not the best example. But here you have a situation where the students can engage with a text, and where a text can be used as an object of facilitation in VTS, and they can go deeper into the text, reflect on the text, and then you can have other students that come with their opinions and say, well, no, I don't think John bought a present because that's not said in the first couple of lines. And then the teacher could ask, well, what is it that makes you say that? Or they just could facilitate and say, well, this, and refer to the text. And so there can be a comparison type situation as well, and the students can listen to each other and develop their understanding of the text and their interpretation of the text. And so that aids a sort of more intensive reading of the text. But what is interesting about this is, like I said earlier on, with regard to pupils going from an art class into other subject areas and applying VTS, one becomes initiated through the protocol of the 3 questions to this type of critical thinking with regard to objects of art, images, texts, can be news articles in the future, and they become capable of analyzing material like that in a more profound and deeper fashion, very quickly and very naturally. And so I think it enhances the engagement, even with a reading text, with a text, it enhances the engagement of people, even in relaxed reading, when they engage with that in the future, because it becomes a second nature. But it's also quite interesting when they're engaging, for example, with media as well, and reading media and telling the difference between, shall we say, what is manipulative media, what can often be described now today as fake news or whatever, and what is more, what is media as well that we can trust as well. So there is also that aspect in it.
Wow.
I hope I've answered your question.
Oh, yeah, it's really interesting, Shaun. And I believe right now Sobat Malmi wants to know more about it, right? So, Shaun, could you give us like example on how you implement visual thinking strategies in your teaching?
Sure. I'm going to just bring up a couple of things on my own screen here, if you'll be just patient with me for just a couple of seconds.
Sure.
Now, what I'm going to do, if it's okay with you guys, I'm just going to do a VTS session with you. All right?
We are ready.
Yeah. Now, I picked a picture, an image that I picked out with the help of Chris as my Indonesian cultural consultant.
Okay.
So if it's a wrong choice, you can blame him.
Sure.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it up on the full screen. No, before I do that, I should share screen, of course, here in Zoom. So host disabled screen sharing. Maybe I can't seem to.
I already make you as a co-host, so I believe that you can share the screen. Can you?
Oh, yes, I can now. Yes, very good. Thank you. Yes. So I'm just going to bring this up and I'm going to make it full screen. Can you see the image?
Yes.
Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Yes.
I think I might change my cursor to, if I can, just very quickly. Sorry about that. I'm going to keep the cursor as it is. I'm going to stop talking. And I'm going to ask you to take a couple of moments, a couple of minutes to look at this picture.
Okay.
All right. So what is going on in this picture?
Some children are playing basketball.
And fire in the building.
Okay, so Yuseva, you've noticed here in the foreground that some children are playing basketball, and Lanoki, you have added that that you have noticed that there is a fire in a building. What is it that you
And
see?
some other sorry, go on. Oh, no. I just want to add that there are also some children who are looking at the building that is now in fire.
Okay, so you've noticed that there are some people here that you think might be children that are in the building, which is on. What is it that you see that makes you say that the building is on fire, Lanoki?
Because I see the smoke.
Okay.
Firefighter.
Okay. So Lanoki, you say that the building is on fire because you see what you think is smoke. And Yuseva, you have noticed that there are people who look like firefighters here. Yuseva, what is it that you see that makes you say that these figures here are firefighters?
The helmet and I think the uniform.
So
like from the top of the building. I focus on the person on the top of the building.
Okay.
It seems to me that the person is wearing helmet and also like uniform for firefighter, you know.
So you said that you say that you think that these people are firefighters because of their helmets and the uniforms that they are wearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. So what more can we find?
I find it a little bit weird with the picture, because if it is true that there is fire on the building, but like those 4 children are still playing basketball and doesn't seem to be like interrupted by the situation, you know, the fire.
Okay, Yuseva, you have noticed that these 4 children are still playing basketball even though this building is on fire, and you find that a little strange.
Yeah.
Add something, Shaun?
Sorry, Thomas?
May I add something?
Of course.
I think the children look so different from others. I don't know why. Their clothes, maybe they show something else. It is not like in their time. I don't know when I see their clothes.
Okay, Thomas. So you've noticed that this picture may be not a contemporary picture, that it may be from another period.
Maybe.
Sorry?
Yes, maybe. So
that it may be from another period. And you say that because you think that their clothes, that their jackets do not appear very modern.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that, Thomas. What more can we find?
I think talking about the different time, I also noticed that some of the buildings in the, I don't know, at the back of the fire, the building at the fire, are not really pictures that are taken at the same time. And it seems like they are different pictures that are put into one frame. Because
Okay.
the color contrast is a little bit different, and it does not look as usual.
Also,
Okay, then,
Sam, sorry, we need more people here actually. As when if we like in Indonesia, we will have more people watching. Something like this.
That's not a problem. 3 people are quite enough. That's not a problem. But Anoki, you went from the focus of the picture to the background, where you were looking at at these buildings in the background, and you noticed that the color of the light on the buildings in the background make them look like that they may not be part of this picture or of this original picture, right? Yeah.
Sorry,
that's right.
sorry, son. What I mean is actually more people watching what happened right now. Because in Indonesia, if something happened like this one, we will have a lot of people watching the fire.
Yes.
So it's not
That's right.
like 10 children, it will be like 100 maybe or more.
Yeah, and sellers.
Yeah.
Sellers.
So Thomas, you're saying that if this occurred in Indonesia, you would have a lot more people
watching
the fire and watching the fire.
And also like those playing basketball, they will stop their playing basketball and they will join like the crowd over there. I mean, like if it happens in Indonesia.
Okay. So you noticed that with these young people in front, or these people who are playing basketball, that they would have joined this crowd that are observing the fire.
Yeah,
if
towards
this
the
was in
building.
Indonesia.
Yeah, if it happens in Indonesia.
What more?
But I think that will also happen in other countries too, because it's too big to notice not to notice the fire.
Right. I mean, like it's strange, right, Lanoka? I mean, like those 4 children, they still play basketball. They're still playing basketball. Yeah.
Okay, so Lanoki, Yusufa, and Thomas, you are noticing that it is strange that they aren't taking any notice of the fire, and that there will be more. What more can we say about this image?
I think it's quite a big fire. I mean, looking at the smoke.
Okay, Yusufa, and what is it that you see that makes you say that it's quite a big fire?
I mean, like the smoke, looking at the smoke, I think it's not only the front part of the building, but I think it's also all over the building. Like if you can see at the back of the building, there are also smoke there.
Okay, so you've noticed that it's also at the back of the building as well. So the smoke is not just here at the front of the building, but also at the back of the building. What more can we find?
Is it fine to say that maybe the picture is fabricated because the component of the pictures are a little bit strange, and the color, and then I don't know, the border of the picture.
Okay,
seems like it's not really a picture like when we have a picture. I think it's maybe a work of art. Or maybe, some people are trying to put pictures together in one frame.
Okay, so Lanoki, you're switching your attention now to the actual image as an object in itself, and you were saying that you think that it might be a number of different pictures together, placed on top of each other, possibly. And that you say that you think that it might be a work of art. What is it that you see that makes you say that you think that it might be a work of art?
Because of the contrast of the black and white, maybe some people, the creator wants to make something that emphasizes on making something through black and white contrasts. Because that's what I can see. The black and white is actually beautifully put together, but the content of the pictures are a little bit intriguing because what we've discussed before.
Okay, so you say that it might be a work of art because of the manner in which the artist or the person who conceptualized this image is using contrast in black and white on the picture.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that we should maybe stop it now. It's always very difficult to know when to stop. But I think we've been doing this for about 10 minutes. So for the sake of the podcast as well, but I think that you've got a pretty good idea of how this method is used, and you can call it a method as well, but is used particularly in the initiation stages. I'd like to ask you, how did you react to this? And I'll give you some of my impressions as well.
Do you mean about the picture or about the
whole
method?
process? About the whole process of what I was doing.
I see. I think we become more participatory. Like when Josefa and Thomas share their opinion about the picture, then I start to look at about what they see, and then I start to see other things because they see the other things too.
Yeah.
I would say as well that I started seeing other things by listening to you as well. I was really surprised by was it Josefa? You talked about the fire being possibly at the back of the building as well. I never really thought about that. I was always focused on the front of the building myself. So that's interesting as well. For me, the person who's doing the facilitation, I'm discovering things as well about this.
Yeah, and I was focusing also on like the picture and trying to see like the people here or the children. I'm not sure whether they are children or teenagers or adults, but I'm focusing on them. But I find it I find that they are actually different from Indonesian people. I mean, in my imagination and opinion. And then when Thomas said that if it happens in Indonesia, and suddenly I also switch my focus on, oh, okay, so I'm thinking about different culture as well.
And that's an interesting aspect, I think, of VTS as well. That first of all, the when you're choosing an image, when you're choosing an object of VTS facilitation, or whatever it might be, it has to have a quality of waking up or inspiring, but waking up curiosity in the people who are in the facilitation. But it also has to be something that can be related to the people involved as well, that they can actually, it's accessible for them, but you a little bit of there's a balance here. Yes, accessible for them, but something that will challenge them as well. And so when you're dealing with VTS for children, you wouldn't use, I don't think I would use this image for young, well, certainly not early years learners. You find material that would be more accessible for them, and then you can complexify it as they progress and as they have experience with more VTS sessions. But you have to think about the ages of your participants. You have to think about where they're at in their own aesthetic development. You have to think about where they're from and how they can relate to it. And the image itself, you don't, during a VTS session, you never refer to, and there's never a wrong answer, and you never refer to what the actual origin of the image is. This image is an image that's, if you like, analyzed in itself and for itself at that moment in time. Then afterwards, like now, one can actually give details about what this image is and where it's from. That's of course entirely possible. But it's interesting as well to get your impressions. But I also thought it was absolutely fascinating doing this VTS with you and watching your reactions and how you were adapting as well as we went through the VTS to the 3 questions, which are not so shouldn't be viewed as a straitjacket, but and at the beginning of VTS and doing VTS, it can really appear very dogmatic at the start, but you can adapt it, because as I was listening to you talk about VTS from an Indonesian cultural point of view, I then changed that 3rd question. And it's a pretty dangerous thing to do as well, I think, sometimes, because it can be leading. But I changed the question from what more can we find to what more can we say. So ultimately I was adapting, and you can do that with children as well, and you kind of have to do it with children as well with these questions. You can adapt the questions to the group that you have, and you can adapt them to their both their individual development and their group development within a classroom as well. So I found it fascinating to do that with you in that sense as well, and really interesting. But just to continue as well to talk about how I might use VTS. Now, let me just see, I'll come out of this if I may. Now, I could have also used an image like this, for example, or an image like this. But I think my 2 favorite images for this, well, I think this is a great image as well. But I think my 2 favorite images for this type of facilitation with you guys would have been either this, because I think that is just an absolutely fascinating image, or this. And that was probably my favorite image to try for this. And Chris agreed with me. But when I've done VTS as well with my own pupils, now, I may have not said this earlier on, but I've worked for about 13 years in a high school here in Denmark as well. And that's when I became interested in VTS. I taught English and French in this high school. And it was during this period that I was introduced to VTS, and I could immediately see the enormous potential of VTS in a language class myself. And that was only confirmed with further work with VTS and training in VTS and research in VTS. But I've worked with, for example, with one of my colleagues in that school who's a history teacher, and we created a sort of a task for our students who were going to the United States on a school trip, where we asked them to take pictures of their experience over there. And so you had various different pictures that they took, and he used it for his own class, and I used this with VTS in my classes. And what I found really interesting is when I did VTS with my pupils' own personal pictures taken from this trip, they found that they were looking at things and details in these pictures that they didn't see when they were taking the pictures themselves. And they were seeing them differently, which was really interesting. And this was one of the pictures from that trip, which I think is a fascinating picture and a very well taken picture of Times Square in New York. It brings up all kinds of things, all kinds of ideas. But it's a very complex picture as well in many respects. When I was working with my pupils in French, I was teaching pupils that were going to be that had a focus on the business as well in the school. So these were pupils of French, of business French in many respects. So I would pick images that would be very close to, well, a business topic. And for these students of French, because their French, their French, they were still at a stage in French where it was difficult for them as well to express themselves in French. I would say to them, well, first of all, I put the questions on a screen for them in French, and I'd do the facilitation as I did with you in French. I would paraphrase what they were saying. If they couldn't find words in French, they could say them in Danish, or they could point at the screen, and then I'd paraphrase. I paraphrase in French. So I've got other pictures as well that I've used as well that I don't have here. I'm so sorry. But those are sort of some of the ways that I use it as well in class with them. And I'll stop talking about that now, except that I am going to show you, oh, sorry, I'll show you yes, this is from vtshome.org, and these are the 3 questions. Are you able to see my screen? Yes, very good. So these are the 3 questions. So this is essentially, these are the components, and this silent moment at the start is really important. Just to give them a minute to look at whatever it is that you're using in your VTS. And the paraphrasing is really important, and the pointing, your own pointing, and take, which I'm not sure I did extremely well with you guys today, but it's always something you can work on, and it takes practice. But these 3 questions are really interesting, I find, because they look so simple. And I'm sure you think this is really simple, and your audience thinks it's really simple, but I challenge you to do this by yourselves. It is really surprising how long it takes to make this second nature. And it's practice, practice, practice. But I find this question is the most interesting for me, and this use of more, the word more, because it's felt so natural for me to say at the start, what else can we find? And I always used to do that at the start. But the problem with what else and the word else is that it doesn't naturally build on what has already come before. So more is the use of the word more not only can allow you to build on what you've heard before, but it also allows you to find new aspects to the object that you're studying. And the Jenewine and Hausen, when they were developing this and with their colleagues, they tried out different wording as well, so that when we go and use VTS in another language, these are things that have to be taken into account as well. What do the words mean that we're using in these questions? How do they affect the manner in which our participants analyze what they see in front of them?
Wow. So,
I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, I would say that what you have done is really fascinating. And I also realized or noticed that the wording is very important. Even I noticed that you never say very good or something like that, but you use some neutral way, like just okay, what more, something like that. That's very difficult for me if I reflect it, because naturally I will say, if someone said something good, I will say very good. What else? Something like that. Yeah, like what you say, we need something.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Thomas. It's very important to maintain neutrality throughout, because if you say if the one comment is very good, you have to say it for all of them. So it's to encourage everybody to participate. That's really important, and maintaining the neutrality. And then the use of the term thank you as well. So, okay, you reach a point in that part of a facilitation, and you say, thank you. And then you come with the third question, what more can we find? So we're opening up into something new, possibly. Not necessarily forgetting about what came before, but opening up for new possibilities. And of course, at the end, and I'm not sure I said thank you to all 3 of you at the end, but that's a very important part of it as well. Because it's to show our participants that we value everything that they say. And now we've used images today because, and it's an interesting point to make as well with regard to reading and your focus on reading as well, that and I'm not sure how I feel about this, but I think I agree with this. But most people who are involved, and most experts who are involved in VTS, point out that in the initiation stages, it's important to use images, because then you can establish this protocol in the participants, and then it can be applied to other objects of study, like, for example, a text. But then again, we can look at visual literacy as well in its wider sense as well, and the importance of images as well in modern literacy, or contemporary literacy, I should say.
Yeah. Okay, so I do believe that this method would be very useful for our students, especially when we try to develop their critical thinking, especially because in Indonesia, it is still a challenge for us to help them with their critical thinking, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The problem I have with VTS, and I'll be honest with you, is that VTS is so good. I find it difficult sometimes myself to grasp all the possibilities. And so when you're explaining it, explain it in two or three sentences as well. So in my explanation at the start, I really tried to focus on some keywords here, and the whole aspect of empathy, democracy, respect for each other's opinions, and working together in developing our critical thinking and our self-reflection as well. And I think particularly for students as well that may come, maybe first-generation university students, I think VTS was a perfect manner to develop their critical thinking abilities. And then they will be passing on these critical thinking abilities to their own students, if it happens to be teaching students, for example, or teacher students, pre-service teacher students. And you can read. I get very excited about this, about how this can really influence in a very positive way societies, including our societies here in Scandinavia, and those two societies that I'm most familiar with, Denmark and Sweden. And the method as well, and I hope I'm not going on here, but the method as well just fits in so well with the Scandinavian philosophy in education, where the child from the very start of their education is treated as a whole person, and that their opinions, their ideas, and the product of those opinions, ideas, what they say, is important and should be listened to. This kind of teaching strategy is absolutely perfect for a system that is based on that, and that is very, very, very heavily based on a Vygotskian approach to teaching, where you have learning through social interaction. It's absolutely perfect for it. It is, for me, somewhat interesting that it was developed in the United States, which is a country that values community, but is very much associated with individualism. I find it really interesting that it was developed there, and that it wasn't developed here, for example. But it's ideal for the Scandinavian education system, I think. Would you think that it would be useful in the Indonesian education system?
Yeah, I think so, because as Thomas mentioned before, that and you also mentioned that VTS is very good to help students to build the critical thinking and then also the empathy. I think it will be very helpful for students to start with pictures, and they can start developing their critical thinking. And again, I do agree that the choice of words will be very challenging, especially when we want to change this into Bahasa Indonesia. I kept thinking about what Bahasa Indonesia, or the words in Bahasa Indonesia that we can use for the word more, the third question, because we use more. So I don't know, maybe apalagi sama ada apa? Apa ya?
Ada apa, Bu?
Ada apa? And then I think VTS will be the strategy that will also encourage participation and engagement through group problem solving process. That's very powerful, as Shaun mentioned before.
Yeah, that's true, Bu. Okay, and also the 3 key questions when using visual thinking strategies, I think, are very important and also should be highlighted in this process, right? Like what's going on in this picture. What is the second one, Mas Thomas?
What is it that you say? Oh, Thomas, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to check. I'm going to check, Shaun, whether they pay attention to you or not. Okay. So what is the second one, Mas Thomas?
Okay, sorry, Shaun. What do you see that makes you say that?
And what is the third one, Bu Uke?
It is what more can we find?
Okay, so Shaun, you are an amazing teacher. See, I mean, like you have great students.
You're not very good for my ego, but thank you.
But that's actually very true.
Well,
I mean, like, I myself really enjoy your explanation, Shaun, and I learned a lot from your session today.
Thank you so much. You're very, very kind. I have to applaud you as well. You're fantastic podcast hosts, podcasters. So you've relaxed me completely. This is the first time I've done a podcast, so I was somewhat nervous. So
we cannot see that. We cannot see that you are nervous.
That's because I forgot that we're recording, which is a very typical thing in such a situation, of course, that researchers many times, and I've read myself many times and said, no, that would not be me. I'd be very conscious of being recorded. Of course I'm not. But you're very good. But it's also due to you as well, because you've relaxed me completely. So that was really nice. That was really nice to do this. So
thank you. And thank you. And also thank you for making time to share today, Shaun. And we really appreciate it. Once again, thank you, Pak Sida, for recommending. Dan untuk Sobat Malmi, stay happy and stay healthy. See you next episode. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye.